Night settles over the dry southern African landscape without bringing true relief. For months, the rains have failed to return. The grass has faded into brittle yellow stalks, the ground has hardened beneath the heat, and the shallow pools that once reflected the sky have become circles of cracked mud. Even after sunset, warmth still rises from the stones as though the earth itself is holding the memory of the day. Across this harsh terrain, a solitary figure emerges from beneath a cluster of exposed roots. It is a honey badger low to the ground. Powerfully built and covered by a broad mantle of pale fur, the animal pauses at the entrance of its shelter. Its dark face moves slowly from side to side. Its eyes are small, but sight is not the sense guiding it tonight. It lifts its nose. The air carries layers of information: dust, dry vegetation, old dung, distant water, and the fading trails of animals that crossed the area hours earlier. Somewhere nearby, a rodent has moved beneath the soil. A snake has passed between two rocks. Farther away, something dead is beginning to release its scent into the warm night. The honey badger steps forward. During the dry season, survival becomes a test of patience. Food is scattered, prey remains hidden, and every journey demands energy that may not easily be replaced. Yet the honey badger is built for persistence. It can travel considerable distances while searching for insects, reptiles, small mammals, roots, eggs, or anything else capable of providing nourishment. Tonight, however, the first hours bring little reward. The badger investigates a fallen log and tears through its softened underside, exposing tunnels once occupied by beetle larvae. They are empty. It turns toward a patch of disturbed earth and begins digging with its long, curved claws. Dust rises around its head, but the burrow contains nothing except the stale scent of an animal that escaped long ago. Still, it continues. The badger crosses an open clearing, climbs over loose stones, and disappears into a corridor of thorny shrubs. The branches scrape against its thick skin, but they barely slow it. On the far side, it finds the broken remains of a termite mound. Again, it digs. Again, there is almost nothing. The night grows deeper. Then the wind changes. The badger freezes. A new scent reaches it. Strong, oily, and unmistakable. Meat. Not fresh enough to belong to living prey, but not old enough to be useless. The animal turns immediately toward the source. The trail leads downhill, toward a dry riverbed bordered by twisted trees and steep banks. During the wet season, water once moved through this channel. Now only pale sand remains, marked by overlapping footprints. The badger descends carefully. The scent becomes stronger with every step. Soon, beneath the shadow of an acacia, it finds the remains of a large antelope. Most of the carcass has already been consumed, but fragments remain between the ribs and around the joints. For a hungry scavenger, it is an extraordinary opportunity. The badger approaches without hesitation. It grips a piece of meat, pulls backward, and begins feeding. Its jaws work quickly. For the first time that night, the long search appears to have been rewarded, but the carcass is not abandoned. Several hours earlier, a group of lions had brought down the antelope after a difficult chase. They fed, moved away to rest, and left what remained beneath the tree. The dry season has weakened many prey animals, but it has also increased competition. Lions cannot afford to surrender food easily. Hid beyond the edge of the riverbed, 3 lionesses are returning. They move almost silently. The first appears between the trees, her body blending with the pale grass. She lowers her head when she sees the smaller animal feeding from the carcass. A second lioness approaches from the opposite side. The third remains behind, cutting off the route toward the open plain. The honey badger has not yet seen them. Then the wind changes again. The scent of lion reaches its nose. Its head rises instantly. Across the riverbed, 2 golden eyes reflect the faint moonlight. The badger steps away from the carcass. Behind it, another lioness emerges from the darkness. To the left, branches shift beneath the weight of the third. In a matter of seconds, the landscape has changed. The food that promised survival has become a trap. The honey badger stands alone in the dry riverbed, surrounded by predators many times its size. It cannot outrun them across open ground. It cannot remain beside the carcass. Every visible route is closing. The nearest lioness takes one slow step forward. The honey badger lowers its body. The long search for food is over. Now begins the search for a way out. The lioness advances without making a sound. Her shoulders rise and fall beneath the skin as she crosses the sand, each step deliberate, each movement controlled. She is not charging yet. There is no need. The honey badger is trapped in the open, separated from the nearest cover by several meters of exposed ground. Behind him, the second lioness moves closer to the carcass. The third remains near the upper bank, blocking the easiest route out of the riverbed. The honey badger turns slowly, measuring the danger around him. He is powerful for his size, but the difference between courage and invincibility is enormous. An adult lioness may weigh more than 10 times as much as he does. Her jaws can crush bone. Her forelimbs can bring down animals far larger than him. In a direct fight, the badger has almost no chance, but survival in the wild is not always decided by strength. Sometimes, it is decided by hesitation. The badger raises the pale fur along his back, making his body appear broader. He lifts his tail, exposes his teeth, and releases a harsh, rattling growl that cuts through the silence of the riverbed. The nearest lioness stops for a few seconds. Predator and intruder face one another. The lioness has probably encountered dangerous animals before. Porcupines can drive quills deep into flesh. Snakes can strike without warning. Even small creatures may cause injuries that become infected or prevent a predator from hunting. The honey badger depends on that uncertainty. He suddenly lunges forward. The movement is not a serious attempt to attack. It is a calculated bluff, a violent burst intended to make the lioness retreat. It works. The predator jumps backward, startled by the badger's refusal to flee. The opening lasts less than a second. The honey badger turns and runs. He races toward a wall of thorn bushes at the edge of the riverbed. Legs are short, and he cannot match the speed of a lioness, but his low body allows him to pass beneath branches that could slow a larger animal. The lioness recovers immediately. Sand erupts behind her as she begins the pursuit. The badger reaches the thorns first. He forces his way through the dense branches, protected by thick skin and coarse fur. The lioness follows but hesitates when sharp twigs strike her face. For a moment, the badger disappears. He emerges on the other side beside a mound of hardened soil. An abandoned aardvark burrow lies beneath it. Such shelters can provide immediate protection from large predators. If the tunnel is deep and narrow enough, even a lion cannot enter. The badger moves directly toward the opening, but something is wrong. The entrance has partially collapsed. Dry soil, stones, and exposed roots block the tunnel. Only a narrow gap remains, far too small for him to enter without digging. He begins immediately. His front claws tear at the hard earth. Dirt flies between his hind legs. Few mammals of his size can excavate as efficiently, and under ordinary circumstances, he might reopen the tunnel within minutes. Tonight, he has only seconds. A branch cracks behind him. The first lioness has found a way around the thorns. The badger digs faster. The blocked entrance grows wider, but not quickly enough. A large stone is lodged beneath the soil, preventing him from reaching the hollow space beyond it. The lioness approaches from the left. Then the second appears on the right. They do not rush him. Instead, they spread apart, creating a tightening semicircle. Their patience is more dangerous than a reckless attack. Each lioness watches the other, waiting for the badger to expose his back. He abandons the burrow. Turning to face them, he releases another series of growls. His mouth opens wide, revealing sharp teeth. The pale mantle along his back remains raised. One lioness extends a paw. The badger snaps at it. She pulls back before he can bite, but the reaction reveals something important. He will attack anything that comes within reach. The lions hesitate again. They are hungry, but hunger does not erase caution. A wound to the eye, nose, or paw could make future hunts more difficult. The badger cannot defeat them, yet he can make the effort costly. That is his only weapon. He looks beyond the predators. To one side lies the open plain, where the lions would overtake him almost immediately. Behind him is the blocked burrow. The thorn bushes no longer offer protection because the first lioness has already crossed them. Only one route remains. A narrow passage climbs from the riverbed into a field of broken rocks. The terrain is unfamiliar and filled with shadows. It may contain dead ends, steep drops, or other predators, but it is the only path not completely closed. The badger charges toward the nearest lioness. She braces for contact. At the last instant, he changes direction and darts past her, close enough for her paw to strike the sand beside his body. The other lioness lunges. Her claws brush the loose skin near his back, but fail to secure a grip. The honey badger reaches the rocks. He climbs rapidly between two boulders and vanishes into the darkness beyond them. The lionesses follow. The badger has escaped the circle, but not the hunt. Ahead lies a maze of stone, ravines, and hidden drops. Behind him, 3 hungry lions are closing the distance. The honey badger enters the rocky passage at full speed. On either side, dark walls rise from the dry earth. Boulders, broken by years of heat and erosion, form narrow corridors that twist through the hillside. For the badger, the terrain offers a possible advantage. His compact body can pass through openings too small for a lioness to enter without slowing down. But the rocks also hide danger. There is no moonlight inside the passage. Every hollow could conceal a snake. Every turn could end against a solid wall. One wrong decision may leave him trapped with the lions behind him. The badger does not stop. His claws strike stone as he scrambles upward, then drops into a shallow channel filled with loose gravel. The first lioness reaches the entrance seconds later. Her larger body cannot follow the same direct line, so she moves around a boulder and searches for a wider route. The second lioness remains close behind her. The third climbs higher along the outside of the passage, attempting to move ahead of the fleeing animal. Lions often rely on position as much as speed. By separating, they can reduce the number of escape routes without wasting energy in a continuous chase. The honey badger hears them moving on both sides. He changes direction and forces himself beneath a slab of stone leaning against the hillside. The gap is so low that his pale back brushes the rock above him. A lioness reaches the opening and thrusts one paw into the darkness. Her claws rake the ground only centimeters behind him. The badger emerges from the far side and runs down a narrow slope. Loose stones tumble after him, striking the rock walls and creating a confusion of echoes. For a moment, the lions lose sight of their target. The badger reaches a cluster of large boulders and disappears between them. There he stops. His chest moves rapidly. Dust covers his face and shoulders. The night air carries the sound of the lionesses searching nearby, but the rocks distort every noise. A movement that seems distant, maybe only a few steps away. The badger lowers himself against the ground. Silence becomes another form of protection. One lioness passes above his hiding place. Her paws disturb small fragments of stone, sending them down the slope. She pauses, lifts her head and listens. The badger remains motionless. The lioness moves on. For several seconds, the maze is quiet. The badger may have gained enough time to slip away unnoticed. Ahead, a narrow corridor descends toward the dry riverbed on the opposite side of the ridge. He begins to move. Then the wind enters the passage. It travels through the rocks, crosses the badger's body, and carries his scent directly toward the lioness above. She stops. Her head turns immediately. The badger hears the change in her movement and begins running again. The lioness drops from the upper ledge, landing behind him with enough force to scatter gravel across the passage. She accelerates, closing the distance in only a few strides. The badger reaches a fallen tree trapped between two rocks. He squeezes beneath the trunk. The lioness leaps over it. Her front paw lands beside him. Before she can strike again, the badger turns with astonishing speed. He opens his jaws, growls, and snaps toward her muzzle. The lioness recoils. Surprised by the sudden counterattack, the badger charges at her feet. The display is not meant to defeat her. It is meant to create uncertainty. A predator expecting retreat is momentarily confronted by an animal moving in the opposite direction. That moment is enough. The badger turns, climbs over a stone shelf, and disappears around another bend. But the second lioness is already there. She lunges from the darkness and catches the loose skin over his back between her teeth. For an instant, the badger is lifted from the ground. His body twists inside the thick, flexible skin. Rather than remaining rigid in the lioness's grip, he turns far enough to bring his head toward her face. His jaws snap close to her nose. The lioness releases him. The badger falls, rolls across the stones, and immediately continues running. He does not escape without consequence. One hind leg strikes a sharp edge, and his movement becomes uneven. He is injured, though the extent of the damage is not yet clear. The lionesses resume the pursuit. Ahead, the passage narrows and rises toward what appears to be an opening. The badger climbs toward it, struggling slightly with each step. Behind him, the predators spread apart once more. He reaches the top, but there is no path beyond it. The rocky corridor ends at the edge of a steep ravine. Approximately 4.5 meters below lies another section of the dry riverbed, its sandy floor covered with branches and scattered stones. The drop is dangerous. A poor landing could break a limb or leave him unable to move. The badger turns. One lioness appears in the passage behind him. Another shadow moves across the rocks to his left. The third is approaching from above. The wind rises, lifting dust over the edge of the ravine. For the first time since the pursuit began, the honey badger has nowhere left to run. Behind him are 3 hungry lions. In front of him is a fall into darkness. The honey badger stands at the edge of the ravine. Below him, the dry riverbed appears pale beneath the weak moonlight. The drop is approximately 4.5 meters, but the ground does not fall vertically all the way. A steep wall of loose soil and fractured stone descends toward a narrow patch of sand. It is not a safe landing. Branches lie scattered across the bottom. Sharp rocks break through the surface and the slope is unstable. If the badger strikes one of the exposed stones, the chase could end immediately. Behind him, the first lioness enters the final section of the passage. She does not rush. The badger has already demonstrated that approaching him carelessly carries a risk. He may be small, but his teeth and claws can still injure the sensitive areas of a predator's face. The lioness moves forward with her head low, watching for another sudden charge. A second lioness appears above the rocks to the left. The third remains somewhere behind the first, sealing the narrow route through which the badger arrived. The trap is almost complete. The honey badger turns toward the predators. His back is only a few steps from the edge. He raises his fur again and releases a deep growl. The sound echoes through the ravine, larger than the animal producing it. The nearest lioness stops. For a moment, neither animal moves. The badger's threat is not empty. If the lioness comes close enough, he will bite. But his defense has limits. He is already exhausted from the chase, and one hind leg bears less weight than the other. The lions have space, time, and numbers on their side. The lioness advances another step. The badger lunges toward her. She pulls back, expecting an attack. But this time, the badger does not continue forward. He turns sharply, runs toward the edge, and launches himself into the darkness. For a fraction of a second, his body is suspended above the ravine. Then gravity takes control. He does not clear a distance of 4.5 meters like a jumping animal crossing an open gap. Instead, he drops from a ledge positioned roughly 4.5 meters above the riverbed, striking the steep slope before reaching the bottom. His front paws hit loose earth, the surface collapses beneath him. The badger begins to slide, turning sideways as dust and stones move with him. He strikes one exposed rock with his shoulder, rolls once, and continues downward through a cloud of sand. At the top, the lioness reaches the edge. She looks down but does not follow. Her body is larger and heavier. A direct descent could cause serious injury, especially on unstable ground. Unlike the badger, she cannot easily fit between the rocks or use the narrow irregularities of the slope to slow her fall. The badger reaches the bottom. He lands heavily on the sandy riverbed and rolls beneath a fallen branch. Then he becomes still. Dust drifts through the moonlight. Above, the three lionesses watch from different points along the ridge. None can immediately determine whether the smaller animal survived the fall. Several seconds pass. The badger's body does not move. The nearest lioness begins searching for a safer path downward. She turns from the edge and disappears behind the rocks. The others separate, one moving along each side of the ravine. The hunt is not over. At the bottom, the badger lifts his head. Slowly, he pushes himself onto his front legs. His injured hind limb trembles, and the impact has left him disoriented. He takes one step, stops, then takes another. He is alive. The sandy surface helped absorb part of the fall. His compact body and low center of gravity may also have reduced the damage, but the descent was not without consequence. His shoulder bears the force of the collision, and his movement has become slower. He looks upward. The lions are no longer visible at the edge. That absence is more dangerous than their presence. The badger knows only that they are moving. He cannot see which route they have chosen or how quickly they will reach the riverbed. He begins walking. The channel ahead bends between two eroded banks. The sand is soft, and every step demands effort. He tries to increase his speed, but the injured leg prevents a normal run. Behind him, stones fall from the slope. One of the lionesses has found a descending path. She appears high on the ravine wall, carefully moving from one ledge to another. Her route is longer than the badger's fall, but it is far safer. Within minutes, she will reach the bottom. The honey badger continues into the narrow channel. He has survived the most dangerous decision of the night, but survival is not the same as escape. The leap has created distance, not safety. The riverbed begins to narrow. Ahead, exposed tree roots form dark openings in the bank. Most are too shallow to offer protection. Others may be blocked beneath the surface. The badger moves toward them, searching for any space large enough to enter. Behind him comes a dull impact. The lioness has reached the sand. She raises her head, finds the trail in the disturbed ground, and begins moving after him. The honey badger has only one final advantage left. He can dig. But first, he must find a place where the lions cannot follow. The lioness enters the dry river channel at a steady pace. She does not need to sprint. Ahead of her, the honey badger leaves an unmistakable trail across the pale sand. His paws carve uneven marks into the surface, and one hind leg drags slightly after every few steps. The leap from the ravine has saved him from immediate capture, but it has also reduced his speed. The channel narrows between two walls of compacted earth. Exposed roots hang from the banks like twisted ropes. Some form shallow cavities, while others disappear into cracks created by erosion. To a small animal, any one of these openings might appear to be a refuge, but most led nowhere. The honey badger investigates the first hollow and finds only a curved pocket beneath the soil. It is deep enough to hide his head, but not his body. He moves to the next opening. This one is blocked by stones. Behind him, the lioness is getting closer. Her footsteps are almost silent, yet the badger senses the vibration through the ground. He turns and sees her shape emerging around the bend. Moonlight catches her eyes, transforming them into two bright points in the darkness. The badger releases another warning growl. The lioness continues forward. She has already watched him bluff, bite, and throw himself from a cliff. She understands the risk of approaching carelessly, but she also recognizes weakness. The smaller animal is limping. His movements are slower. His breathing is heavy. The badger turns back toward the bank. Near the roots of an old acacia, he finds a narrow horizontal crack. Rainwater once cut into the soil beneath the tree, creating a channel that extends farther than the other cavities. The entrance is barely wide enough for his shoulders. He pushes his head inside. Cool air moves against his face. The opening continues. The badger begins digging immediately. His long front claws tear through dry soil with extraordinary speed. Sand and fragments of root fly behind him. He forces his body deeper into the bank, widening the crack as he advances. The lioness begins to run. The honey badger's hindquarters are still exposed when she reaches the tree. Her paw strikes the ground beside him. The badger pushes forward, but his injured leg slips in the loose earth. Before he can disappear, the lioness catches the skin across his lower back with one paw and pulls. For an instant, the badger is dragged backward. His claws cut deep lines through the soil as he struggles to remain inside the opening. The lioness lowers her head, preparing to secure him with her jaws. But the badger's loose skin gives him one final defensive advantage. Although the lioness holds the outer layer across his back, his body can still twist beneath it. Inside the narrow tunnel, he rotates violently, turning his head toward the paw gripping him. His jaws close around the air beside the lioness's toes. She withdraws instinctively. The grip disappears. The badger surges forward and resumes digging. The lioness thrusts her paw into the opening again, but the tunnel curves beneath a thick root. Her claws scrape the badger's fur without securing him. Seconds later, he moves beyond her reach. The lioness begins tearing at the entrance. Her powerful paws remove large sections of earth, widening the opening with every strike. The bank shakes. Dust fills the tunnel. For the badger, the shelter is not yet secure. If the soil remains soft, the lioness may excavate enough of the cavity to expose him. He continues deeper. The tunnel becomes narrower beneath the root system, forcing him to flatten his body. He removes soil from the front and pushes it backward, gradually creating a chamber where he can turn. Outside, another lioness arrives, then the third. Together, they surround the acacia. One claws at the entrance while another digs from above, attempting to collapse the roof. The third waits beside the riverbed, watching for the badger to emerge from a second opening. But there is no second opening. The honey badger has entered a dead end. Inside the darkness, he stops digging and listens. The soil trembles around him. Fine sand falls from the roof. The lions are close enough that he can hear their breathing through the earth. If the tunnel collapses, he may be trapped beneath the soil. If he returns to the entrance, the lionesses will be waiting, so he begins another excavation. Turning sideways inside the small chamber, the badger digs downward and away from the tree. The soil is harder here, packed between stones and thick roots. Every movement requires energy. He is almost exhausted. Minutes pass. Outside, the lions continue working at the bank. The entrance grows wider, but the deeper section remains protected by roots too thick for their claws to remove quickly. Eventually, one lioness stops digging. She sits beside the opening and waits. The others follow her example. The riverbed becomes silent. Inside the shelter, the honey badger remains motionless. He cannot know whether the predators have left or are simply waiting for him to make a mistake. The night moves slowly toward dawn. Then, far across the savanna, a herd of antelope begins to run. The sound reaches the lions first. One lioness raises her head. Another turns toward the open plain. Hunger has brought them to the badger, but hunger now offers a more valuable opportunity. One by one, they leave the acacia. Their footsteps fade into the distance. Still, the honey badger does not emerge. He remains beneath the roots, injured, exhausted, and alive, waiting for the one thing more important than courage: certainty. Dawn arrives slowly over the dry riverbed. At first, there is only a pale line above the eastern horizon. Then the darkness begins to retreat from the rocks, revealing the marks left by the night's struggle. Disturbed sand, broken branches, deep claw marks around the acacia, and the broad footprints of 3 lionesses disappearing toward the open savanna. Beneath the roots, the honey badger remains hidden. He has heard the predators leave, but sound alone is not proof of safety. Lions can wait silently beside a burrow, knowing that hunger or fear may eventually force an animal into the open. The badger does not take that risk. Minutes pass. The calls of night animals fade. Small birds begin moving through the branches above him. Farther away, francolins announce the morning while insects emerge from cracks in the warming soil. Still, the badger waits. Only when sunlight reaches the entrance does he begin to move. His head appears first. He pauses with most of his body still protected beneath the tree. His nose tests the air repeatedly, separating fresh scents from those left hours earlier. The smell of lions remains strong around the entrance, but it is no longer accompanied by movement. The badger advances another few centimeters. The riverbed is empty. He pulls himself into the open. The damage from the night is now visible. Dust covers his pale mantle. One shoulder is bruised from the descent into the ravine, and his injured hind leg still fails to carry his full weight. He takes several slow steps, then stops beneath the acacia. Above him, the wall from which he fell rises over the river channel. In daylight, the distance appears even greater. The ledge is positioned approximately 4.5 meters above the sandy bottom. The badger did not perform an extraordinary athletic jump across that distance. He made something more desperate: a committed leap from a dangerous height, followed by a fall and uncontrolled slide down an unstable slope. The difference matters. Honey badgers are famous for their boldness, but myths often transform that boldness into invulnerability. In reality, they can be injured and killed. Their thick skin offers protection but not armor. Their loose hide may help them twist when seized, but it cannot make a lion's bite harmless. The animal standing beneath the tree survived not because he was impossible to kill, but because every part of his body and behavior created a small advantage. His low, powerful build allowed him to move beneath thorns and between rocks. His claws opened the final refuge beneath the roots. His flexible skin made it difficult for the lionesses to hold him securely. His aggressive defense forced larger predators to hesitate before attacking. Yet none of those traits would have been enough without judgment. The badger did not remain beside the carcass to defend food he could not keep. He confronted the lionesses only when doing so created an opportunity to flee. He used narrow terrain instead of challenging them in the open. At the ravine, he accepted the danger below because the threat behind him was even greater. These were not signs of fearlessness. They were responses to fear. In the wild, fear is not weakness, it is information. It identifies danger, sharpens attention, and forces an animal to choose between imperfect options. Survival often belongs not to the creature that feels no fear, but to the one that reacts before fear becomes paralysis. The honey badger begins walking along the base of the riverbank. He avoids the open center of the channel and remains close to roots, stones, and vegetation. His progress is slow, but the injured leg continues to support him. With rest, the damage may heal. Before leaving the riverbed, he stops near a patch of loose soil. A faint movement passes beneath the surface. Despite his exhaustion, instinct takes over. The badger begins digging. Within seconds, his claws expose a small burrowing rodent hidden below the sand. It is not a large meal, but after the night he has endured, it is enough. He feeds quickly and continues toward a field of rocks where he can rest through the heat of the day. Behind him, the savanna erases the evidence. Wine softens the tracks in the sand. Birds return to the acacia. The disturbed riverbed becomes quiet once more. The lions remain somewhere beyond the ridge. Still hunting, the honey badger remains alive. He did not defeat the predators. He did not conquer the savanna, and his famous reputation did not make him untouchable. He survived because courage created hesitation, intelligence found an escape route, and one impossible decision bought him the seconds he needed. Sometimes, survival is not a victory over the enemy. Sometimes, it is simply reaching the next sunrise. The honey badger's escape reminds us that survival is not always about being the strongest or the fastest. Sometimes, it depends on courage, instinct, and a single decision made at the most dangerous moment. If this incredible story surprised you, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more mysterious and unforgettable encounters from the wild. Until the next adventure.